This happened about 2 years ago, when I was living alone in a small rental house just outside of town. It was a one-story place on a dead-end road. There were only 5 houses on the entire street. No traffic, no noise. At night, the whole road went completely silent. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, so most days I didn't really leave unless I needed groceries. I wasn't the kind of person who had people just showing up. Anyone who came over always texted me first, every single time. So when I heard 4 firm knocks on my front door at 8:45 on a Thursday night, I immediately felt that something was off. Not in an obvious way, more like that quiet feeling in the back of your head when something doesn't add up, but you can't quite explain why. I muted the TV and just sat there for a second, listening. Then 2 more knocks. I got up and walked to the door, looked through the peephole. There was a man standing on my porch holding a medium-sized cardboard box. Dark jacket, baseball cap, somewhere in his mid-30s. He looked completely normal. He looked like any delivery driver you've ever seen. I opened the door, but I kept the chain on. Just a habit I had. He immediately said he had a delivery that required a signature. Then he read out a name. It wasn't mine, not even close. I told him he had the wrong address. He looked at the box, then at whatever device he was holding. Then he looked back at me and read the delivery address out loud. It was my exact address, my street, my house number, everything. I told him again, no one by that name lives here. I'm the only one who lives here, and that's not my name. He stared at me for just a second too long, then said he'd take it back to the truck. I watched him through the window as he walked away down the driveway. There was no truck, no van, no car, nothing parked anywhere on that road. He just kept walking until he was out of sight. I told myself it was probably nothing, a mix-up, some kind of system error with the address. I almost believed that. The next night, at almost the same time, I heard 3 knocks at the door. I went and looked through the peephole. Same man, same box. I didn't open the door this time. I talked to him through it and told him he had already come yesterday. He said he knew, but the delivery still needed a signature and he had to attempt it again. I said I wasn't signing for something that wasn't mine and that he had the wrong person. He didn't push back. He didn't argue. He just said okay, he understood. But he didn't leave right away. I kept watching through the peephole. He was just standing on my porch. His eyes moved slowly to the windows on the left side of the house, then to the right. Then he looked at the side of the building. He was looking at everything, not in a confused way, deliberately, like he was memorizing the layout. On the 3rd night, nothing happened. I stayed alert, but nobody came. I thought maybe it was done. Then the 4th night arrived and everything changed. I was in the kitchen when I heard knocking, but it wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from the side of the house, near the dining room window. Slow, deliberate knocking, on the glass. And then, a few seconds later, 4 knocks at the front door. I went and looked. It was him, standing on the porch. No box this time. I didn't say anything. I didn't open the door. I just stood there watching him through the peephole until he eventually walked away. That night, around midnight, I noticed him again. He was standing across the street, just past the edge of the streetlight, standing completely still and facing the house. I watched him for nearly 3 minutes. He didn't move. The next morning, I called the police and told them everything. The officer I spoke to didn't seem particularly surprised. He told me this is actually a known method that burglars use to scope out properties. They show up with a fake package. If someone answers, they mark the house as occupied and move on. If nobody answers, they note it and come back later, assuming the house is empty. He said the part that concerned him was that this man had come back multiple times even after I answered. That usually means he was trying to establish a pattern, figure out when I was home, what the layout looked like, whether there were any easy entry points. They took a report and said they'd increase patrols on my street. That same night, the knocking started again. Front door first, then nothing for a few minutes, then a sound I hadn't heard before. The back door handle, turning slowly, stopping, then turning again, and then the sound of something metal pressing and scraping against the door frame. I realized there was more than one person. I called 911. I kept the phone in my hand and stayed away from any windows. I heard movement outside for another minute or two, and then, a few minutes before the police arrived, everything went quiet. The officers found fresh pry marks on the back door. Whoever was out there had been actively trying to force it open. 2 days later, police arrested the man. In his car, they found a stack of empty cardboard boxes, a fake delivery scanner, and no affiliation with any delivery company. He admitted to using the method. He confirmed everything I had suspected. If I had ignored him even once, just once, he would have come back expecting an empty house. I moved out 3 months later. I still work from home. I still live alone. But now, if someone knocks at night without texting first, I don't go to the door at all. I just let them think nobody's home. This next one comes from someone in Glasgow, Scotland. This happened to them and their family during Christmas. A few weeks before Christmas, they started noticing something strange. Every few nights, there would be a knock at their front door. Not aggressive, just a couple of knocks. But every time they went to open it, there was nobody there. They checked outside. Nothing. No footsteps, no cars pulling away. Just an empty street. It kept happening. Different nights, different times, always the same result. Then on Christmas night, at 2 in the morning, they heard it again. A faint knock. But this time it wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from somewhere inside the house. Then footsteps, moving slowly up the stairs. They assumed it was someone in the family getting up for water. It wasn't. A man was standing at the top of the stairs. A stranger, inside their home. He was drunk, barely keeping his balance, opening doors and checking rooms like he was looking for something. They managed to get him out of the house. When they did, he smashed the window by the front door and pushed his face through the broken glass. He said, "This is my house. I'll be back." Police found him nearby, following a trail of blood in the snow. He used to live in that house years before and claimed the whole thing was a mistake. But they never got an explanation for the knocking on those other nights. The nights when nobody was ever at the door. This one was sent in by someone who says it's one of the earliest memories they have that still unsettles them to this day. They were 6 years old when it happened. Their father was deployed overseas. It was just them and their mother. One night during a rainstorm, they were looking out the window together when they noticed a man walking slowly down the street in a bright yellow raincoat. He didn't look like he was in a hurry. He didn't look lost. He just walked until he reached the end of their driveway and stopped. Then started yelling. They couldn't make out the words clearly over the rain, but his tone was angry, threatening. He kept yelling and staring directly at their house. They backed away from the window. They had no phone, no way to call anyone, so they turned off the lights and hid. Later that night, heavy banging on the front door, screaming to be let inside. It went on for what felt like a very long time before it finally stopped. A few weeks later, they woke up and found the front door open. A window had been cut. Money was missing from inside the house, including some from the child's bedroom. They never found out who did it. They never found out if it was the same man. But they never forgot the yellow raincoat, standing in the rain, at the end of the driveway, just standing there. The last story comes from someone who was doing a year-long assignment in a small town in rural Idaho. They were staying in a rented house with one other person. One night around 11 p.m., they heard a single knock on the kitchen window. They ignored it at first. Could have been anything. Then a knock at a different window, on the opposite side of the house. Then one on the window right next to where they were sitting. Someone was outside, moving around the house. window to window, working their way around the perimeter slowly, deliberately, knocking on each one. Then the knocking reached the front door, then stopped, then started again at the bedroom window at the back. They called their landlord. He showed up within 10 minutes and he brought a shotgun. Whoever it was had already gone by then. But in the snow around the house they found footprints, a single set, going all the way around the building in a full circle. They never found out who was out there. They never found out what they wanted. Nothing ever happened again after that night. But they said the worst part wasn't the knocking. It was the silence right after it stopped. That specific kind of silence, they said, that tells you something is still out there, just listening. Anyway, those are the 4 stories for tonight. If anything like this has ever happened to you, I'd be interested to hear about it. And I know this probably goes without saying at this point, but if a stranger ever knocks on your door unexpectedly at night, especially more than once, take it seriously. Trust whatever you're feeling. Don't convince yourself it's nothing just because you can't explain it yet. Thanks for watching.